After its release, the anime film aSilentVoice sparked intense discussions among audiences. The reviews for this film showed a clear trend of polarization. So, what kind of story does this anime tell? And years later, is it still worth watching? Today is the day the boy plans to take his own life. He takes out his entire life savings and walks alone on a pedestrian bridge. As his thoughts drift while preparing to end his guilt-ridden life, he realizes he still has unfinished business. He must see an important friend one last time. This story begins 6 years earlier when Shoya was just an ignorant elementary school student. He spent his days aimlessly, caring about nothing but games. However, the arrival of a pink-haired girl would completely change his life. Her introduction was unique. She pulled out a notebook and, using just a few written words, introduced herself in silence. It turned out that she had a hearing impairment and could only communicate with classmates through writing. At first, everyone welcomed this special classmate and adapted to communicating with her in this different way. But this harmony didn't last long. Writing to communicate became tiring and frustrating for the students. Their choir competition was also lost due to Shoko's unusual pronunciation, leading her classmates to gradually distance themselves from her. Forced to endure this silent exclusion, Shoko remained passive until one day, a small stone struck her. Instead of getting angry, she mistook Shoya's action as an attempt at friendship. As the setting sun cast a warm glow on Shoko's lonely figure, she remained isolated even after transferring to a new school. The next day, a sign language teacher arrived, hoping to teach the class sign language to better communicate with Shoko. However, no one was willing to invest time in someone they considered different. But then Miyoko, a quiet girl in the corner, raised her hand. She was willing to learn. Soon, she became Shoko's only friend, but at a cost. She too was ostracized. Unable to endure the pressure, Miyoko eventually transferred schools, leaving Shoko alone once more. For reasons unknown, Shoya one day wrote mocking words about Shoko on the blackboard, even implying that Miyoko's transfer was Shoko's fault. Just as Shoko noticed it, Shoya pretended to be kind and wiped it off. Instead of retaliating, Shoko silently wrote, "Thank you." But to Shoya, this thank you felt unbearable. From then on, the bullying escalated. Shoya and his classmates frequently stole Shoko's hearing aids, once even injuring her ear, causing blood to trickle down her arm. Despite all this, Shoko only responded with an apology. She even used sign language to express her wish to be friends with Shoya. Unable to understand her actions, Shoya, in anger, threw her notebook into the water. The next day, Shoko didn't come to school. The teachers learned from Shoko's mother that over the past 5 months, Shoko had lost 8 hearing aids. Suddenly, Shoya thought about his hard-working mother, and his hands began to tremble in fear. As the primary culprit, he became the scapegoat, with his classmates pushing all the blame onto him. When he tried to expose the other bullies, they turned against him. In a twist of fate, Shoya found himself in the same position as Shoko once was. He became the outcast, isolated by everyone. He found Shoko's discarded notebook in a pond, just as she had once been bullied. Now he was. For the first time, he understood her pain. Walking home alone, he flipped through the notebook filled with painful memories. As he stepped inside, his mother, having just learned the truth from a phone call, was waiting for him. Without saying a word, she took him to the bank, withdrew a thick stack of cash, and personally apologized to Shoko's mother, offering compensation. When she returned, blood was visible near her ear. An earring had been forcibly torn off. At that moment, he finally realized the gravity of his mistakes. Back at school, everything changed. The bullying that Shoko once endured now fell upon Shoya as a form of karmic punishment. After school, when he returned to the classroom, he saw Shoko standing in front of his desk, wiping away graffiti that had been scribbled on it. In that moment, perhaps Shoko's actions made him realize that he was just as pitiful as she was. Refusing to accept this truth, he lashed out at Shoko, the first and last time Shoko ever resisted. Not long after, The girl who once silently wiped the graffiti for him disappeared. Shoko had transferred schools. Time flew by and years passed. Carrying guilt, Shoya grew up. He returned the money to his mother, not because he feared death, but because he felt suicide was an irresponsible escape. He at least needed to personally apologize to Shoko. He sought her out at a sign language school and, after much searching, finally saw her again. Shoko had grown into a beautiful young woman, looking completely different from before, uncertain of how to face her. Emotions flooded her heart. Shoya returned her old notebook and, with trembling hands, used sign language to express his wish. He wanted to be her friend. When Shoko was a child, she had also made the same gesture to him. Tears welled up in her eyes in shock. For some reason, Shoya abandoned the idea of ending his life. Shoko's face appeared in his dreams, rekindling his desire to live. As the morning sunlight streamed in, a new day began. At the breakfast table, his mother was relieved that he had returned the money, but also questioned him about his suicidal thoughts. Shoya did not respond, nor did he deny it. Without hesitation, his mother picked up a lighter and threatened to burn the money, unless he promised not to take his own life. Seeing his hard-earned money about to turn to ashes, Shoya swore on the spot that he would never attempt suicide again. After entering middle school, due to rumors spread by his elementary school classmates, Shoya was once again labeled a bully and isolated. This led him to completely shut himself off from others. Even after moving on to a high school where no one knew him, he continued to avoid socializing, unable to even make eye contact with others. One day, he witnessed a boy being bullied by delinquents. The boy, nicknamed Fatty, refused to lend his bicycle to strangers and desperately called for help. Shoya understood the pain of being bullied, but lacked the courage to intervene. Instead, he sacrificed his own bicycle. Unfortunately, that day was a Tuesday, his designated day to visit Shoko. He had been looking forward to it, but was now conflicted. At the crucial moment, his bicycle was taken away, as if fate was telling him not to go. Wanting his visit to seem natural, he bought a piece of bread to feed the fish with Shoko. However, a boy named Yuzuru blocked his way. Although Shoko was inside, Yuzuru claimed she wasn't home and shut the door in his face. On his way home, Fatty returned Shoya's stolen bicycle, feeling warmth from another person for the first time in a long while. Shoya slowly began to open up. From then on, Fatty became his companion at school, and they often spent time together. This newfound sense of fulfillment brought back Shoya's long-lost smile, but when it came to friends, he wished most of all to be friends with Shoko. Yet, what was their relationship exactly? Pondering this, he asked Fatty about his first friendship. Seeing Shoya's struggles, Fatty simply made a gesture with his hand, saying that friendship is something beyond words or logic, something that cannot be easily explained. Encouraged by Fatty, Shoya resolved to visit Shoko again. Even though Shoko was right in front of him, Yuzuru still blatantly lied, even claiming to be dating Shoko. Shoya was disheartened, but in the next moment, Fatty stepped forward and grabbed Yuzuru. Unlike the timid Shoya, Fatty was assertive. Yuzuru, watching the exchange, had always believed Shoya was just a bully, but now she saw his sincerity. Shoko too was happy. Yuzuru fell silent. The two sat by the bridge, feeding the fish together. Under the cherry blossoms, the atmosphere was warm and peaceful, as if past grievances had melted away. Shoko took out her notebook to thank Shoya, but inside were only painful memories. Shoya tried to stop her from flipping through it. In the struggle, the notebook slipped from their hands and fell into the river. Seeing how important it was to Shoko, Shoya jumped into the river without hesitation. He also followed suit, though in the process, he accidentally caught a glimpse under Shoko's skirt. Fortunately, they recovered the waterlogged notebook. Holding it close, Shoko sincerely thanked Shoya and looked forward to seeing him again. That night, Yuzuru uploaded a picture of Shoya jumping into the river, which quickly spread throughout the school. As a result, Shoya was suspended. That afternoon, while picking up his niece, he happened to meet Yuzuru, who was alone. Yuzuru admitted that she was the one who posted the photo, but Shoya wasn't angry. In fact, he felt relieved knowing it was her. In the next moment, Yuzuru suddenly fainted. Shoya carried her home. Yuzuru was well taken care of by Shoya's family. She shared a meal with them and had a place to sleep. But this kindness only deepened her guilt. Late at night, it started raining heavily. Yuzuru wandered barefoot through the streets, but suddenly, the rain above her was blocked. Looking up, she saw Shoya. At last, Yuzuru confessed her true identity. She was Shoko's younger sister. She had run away from home after an argument with Shoko, stemming from the photo incident that got Shoya suspended. Shoko had taken Shoya's side, and Yuzuru, not understanding why, had lashed out and stormed off. But after spending time with Shoya, she finally understood. Shoya walked Yuzuru home, but as they arrived, Shoko's mother appeared without a word. Shoya froze. He had no idea what to say besides sorry. From that day on, Yuzuru no longer rejected Shoya, and their meetings became more frequent. Shoya decided to take Shoko to visit their old elementary school friend, Miyoko. On the train, the warm sunlight shone on them as they looked at each other, as if something between them was melting away. The once vast distance between them had now closed to the space of a single door. On this journey, they successfully reunited with Miyoko and unexpectedly ran into another former classmate working at a nearby cat cafe. Once again, their fates intertwined. Their elementary school classmate, Naka, apologized for ostracizing Shoya in the past. But at that moment, Shoya's attention was on Shoko, who stood across the street. Naoka suddenly ran across the road and, just like in their childhood, snatched away Shoko's hearing aid. But this time, Shoya stood by Shoko's side as her friend. Caught off guard, the classmate could only laugh it off and leave. That day, Shoko tied her hair into a lively ponytail, but she wasn't wearing her hearing aid in her right ear. Her condition had worsened. Her right ear could barely hear anymore. In the evening, Shoko and Shoya happened to meet on the bridge. Seeing Shoya, Shoko's face suddenly flushed red. Uncharacteristically, she used spoken words to communicate with him. Gathering her courage, she handed Shoya a prepared gift and finally voiced the feelings she had long harbored. "I like you." However, due to her unclear pronunciation, Shoya misheard it as moon. Seeing his reaction, Shoko grew embarrassed and ran away. Confused, Shoya turned to Yuzuru for clarification. Though Yuzuru knew the truth, she chose not to reveal it directly. Instead, she suggested that Shoya invite Shoko out to play, so he could figure things out for himself. Following Yuzuru's advice, Shoya invited a group of friends to an amusement park. Naoka tagged along uninvited, pretending to be close to Shoko, though Shoko seemed slightly uneasy. Despite this, Shoya felt unusually happy that day. Yet, he couldn't help but question himself. Did he really deserve this joy, this youth? Naoka suddenly pulled Shoya away to buy takoyaki. To his surprise, the vendor turned out to be a former classmate who had bullied him in the past. As unpleasant memories surged back, he instinctively shut himself off, and his mood plummeted. Naoka believed that if people met again, things could change, but Shoya disliked her meddling. Naoka blamed everything on Shoko, saying that her presence had shattered their friend group and ruined Shoya's life. However, Shoya didn't see things that way. Unexpectedly, Naoka invited Shoko to ride the Ferris wheel with her. Worried, Yuzuru discreetly attached a recording camera to her sister. As expected, what was captured was unsettling. Inside the Ferris wheel, Naoka bluntly admitted her hatred for Shoko. She accused Shoko of causing their group to fall apart and blamed her for Shoya's misfortunes. Like before, Shoko remained silent, but this only infuriated Naoka more. In her frustration, she slapped Shoko hard across the face, yelling that she had not changed at all in 5 years. More than Naoka's words, Shoya realized a deeper issue: Shoko's self-loathing. He needed to find a way to help her open up. But before he could take action, disaster struck. Everyone discovered that Shoya had once bullied Shoko. Accusations flew in both directions as people exposed each other's pasts. Disgusted, Shoya ran out of the classroom, covering his mouth. He realized that, like Shoko, he also harbored deep self-hatred. Maybe that was why he had once wanted to end his own life. Later, Naoka and the others met on the bridge while searching for Shoya, but instead of making peace, they argued over their past actions, each pushing the blame onto someone else. Frustrated, Shoya took all the responsibility onto himself, exposing the hypocrisy behind their masks. The group fell apart, parting on bad terms. Witnessing this, Shoko's lips trembled with sadness. That night, Yuzuru flipped through her sister's childhood journal. Their grandmother, seeing Yuzuru exhausted, urged her to rest. She could tell Yuzuru was worried about her sister. Although Yuzuru had stopped attending school, she was still a kind-hearted child, one her grandmother was proud of, just like Shoko. A few days later, Shoya saw Yuzuru, crying secretly while feeding fish on the bridge. He soon learned that their grandmother had passed away. Her death was yet another devastating blow to an already struggling family. After the funeral, a butterfly with black-spotted wings fluttered around Yuzuru and Shoko before flying away. Like a final farewell from their grandmother's spirit, to help Shoko out of her sorrow, Shoya invited her out every day. If once or twice wasn't enough, he would drown her sadness in happiness. However many times it took. One day, he even attended Shoko's mother's birthday party. Though her mother despised Shoya, she couldn't refuse her daughters. As time passed, Shoya felt like he'd gradually become part of the Nishimiya family. They all went together to a fireworks festival. As the brilliant fireworks illuminated the night sky, the group enjoyed the simple beauty of the moment. Shoya made a promise to accompany Shoko again at next year's festival. Only after saying it did he realize how embarrassing it sounded. Then, she stood up and said she needed to return home to study. At that moment, Yuzuru realized she had forgotten her camera and asked Shoya to retrieve it. He strolled back toward their house at a leisurely pace. When he opened the door, suddenly, the next burst of fireworks lit up the night sky, casting light into the room. In that glow, Shoko's figure became faintly visible outside the window. Something felt off. Shoya rushed forward. Shoko was standing on the windowsill. The fireworks continued to explode, dazzling yet fleeting. In the next moment, Shoko's figure disappeared. At the final critical moment, Shoya tightly grasped Shoko's hand, but pulling someone up with one hand was incredibly difficult. He gradually felt his strength failing, even though Shoko was right in front of him. The tolling bell of death did not cease. He prayed to the gods for a miracle. If there was a tomorrow, he promised to properly look into people's faces and truly listen to their voices. Her eyes blurred with tears, but the sight of the boy risking everything for her awakened her will to live. She reached out her other hand and grabbed the railing. Seeing this, Shoya immediately pulled her up, but in doing so, he himself fell. Shoya's mother rushed to the hospital to see her unconscious son. Shoko's mother and Yuzuru knelt before her in deep remorse, apologizing. Meanwhile, Naoka lashed out at Shoko, kicking and hitting her, venting all her frustrations. To her, Shoko's existence had brought misfortune to Shoya. Just then, Shoko's mother arrived and, in a desperate attempt to protect her daughter, got into a scuffle with Naoka. It was ultimately Shoya's mother who put a stop to the fight. Shoko knelt before Shoya's mother, repeatedly saying, "I'm sorry." Afterward, Shoko gradually opened her heart. She resolved to make amends for the things she had broken, and to no longer hide her feelings from her friends. She even chose to face Naoka, who had been taking care of Shoya day and night while he was in the hospital. Though difficult, the two eventually stopped resenting each other. In a dream, Shoko met Shoya. He told her he might not have much time left. Shoko woke up in shock, as if something precious was slipping away. She ran desperately, arriving at the bridge where she and Shoya used to feed the fish. Looking around, she found no one there. She could no longer hold back her sorrow. She crouched down and cried out, her voice filled with agony. A single tear fell into the river, and a koi fish, as if sensing her emotions, turned around and swam away, as if carrying her feelings to someone far away. Perhaps that feeling truly reached him, because in his hospital bed, Shoya suddenly sat up. He yanked off his medical equipment and, stumbling, ran toward the bridge. It was as if fate had arranged it. Shoya finally met Shoko again. Shoko gasped in shock. Unable to believe her eyes, she rubbed them, then reached out to poke Shoya, making sure he wasn't a ghost. Reunited, Shoya apologized for everything he had done to her in the past. He believed it was his fault that Shoko had made the worst choice. But Shoko, through tears, insisted that it was because she had failed to change that things had turned out this way. Shoya comforted her, telling her that he had once felt the same way, but had come to realize that life should not be thrown away. He told her he wanted to help her keep living. He took her hand and formed the sign for friends. Realizing how sentimental he had become, Shoya suddenly felt embarrassed. Seeing his reaction, Shoko couldn't help but laugh and responded in sign language. "It's a promise." Under the starry sky, they made a vow. After Shoya was discharged, he learned that Yuzuru had been looking after him the entire time. Shoko's mother and his mother started to get along. Yuzuru returned to school, and her photographs became filled with more positivity. The next day, Shoya invited everyone to attend the cultural festival together. The once broken friendships slowly started to mend. Shoya also gradually overcame his fear of facing people, and finally started listening to the voices of those around him. aSilentVoice tells the story of a wounded soul filled with self-loathing, one that goes through pain, self-doubt, and despair before ultimately finding healing. Shoko, who had hearing impairments since childhood, struggled to communicate with others. Her sister, mother, and grandmother were also ostracized because of her, leaving her feeling helpless. Shoya, after falling out with his friends because of his past actions, was consumed by guilt. With the loss of his grandmother, the one person who truly understood him, his sorrow deepened. Gentle, kind-hearted people often struggle to survive in a world that is neither gentle nor kind. Just like the final straw that breaks the camel's back, Shoko lost all motivation to live. But in that moment, Shoya saved her. Not just her life, but also her heart. "I want you to live. If you are alive, I will be happy. If you are happy, I will be happy too. So please, keep smiling and stay strong."